What's up, everyone? Welcome to this day in Philly Sports History for March 4th, 2024. I'm your host, Jim Montgomery. It is a Monday edition of the podcast. It's going to be a tale of 2 days, apparently, as the rain comes in later. But yesterday was such a tease. It was great being out and just enjoying it, playing some baseball, playing some basketball. Just a lot of fun, and spring is here, and I cannot wait. But as always, let's start with today's question of the day, recap of yesterday's question of the day. I asked you, should the Eagles give Jason Kelce a deadline to let them know what his plans are? And 80% of you said no. He's earned the right to take as much time as he wants. Respectfully, I disagree. I think as a team, you need to worry about what your next steps are, so they need to know that as soon as possible. I do, however, think that they've talked and they know there's like a deadline and they don't need to come out and say it publicly. But as always, thank you for participating in the question of the day. There will be another one later in the show. Staying with the Eagles theme, the rumor and word on the street is that Fletcher Cox will in fact retire at some point this offseason. And if he does, great career. One of the best to ever do it for the Eagles. Former first-round pick, number 12 overall, 4-time All-Pro, 6-time Pro Bowler. He's on the NFL 2010's All-Decade team, 70 sacks, 14 fumble recoveries, 3 touchdowns, and a Super Bowl championship. And to me, he was one of those guys that quietly just was dominant. And when he first came out, he was good. But then just really once he started getting national attention, it was kind of like, yeah, you realize how good he was. And I feel the same thing for me anyway happened with Brian Dawkins. We knew how good he was, and I knew. But then all of a sudden to hear the national buzz about him, and I really think that is the case with Fletcher. So if this is the end, and I don't think there's any shocker there. There was speculation and rumors coming out at the end of the season last year that this could be it for Fletch. But one hell of a career. Thank you, Fletcher, for all you've done in helping to bring a Super Bowl championship to Philadelphia. We certainly all appreciate it. I definitely will be in the Eagles Hall of Fame someday. Probably the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, and even possibly, I guess you could make the argument for the NFL Hall of Fame. Bonus question of the day there, is Fletcher Cox a Pro Football Hall of Famer? 267-495-8531, let me know. But speaking of the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame, the ballot is out, and while you don't get a chance to have any official say as a fan, you do have a chance to have your voice heard. Go to phillyhall.org/fansvoice, fill out a ballot, and if your ballot most closely matches the official induction class, you will win 2 VIP tickets to the ceremony in November. That's phillyhall.org/fansvoice. I left the link in the description for you. All right. Moving right along. Going back to the Sixers now. Good win for them yesterday. 120-116 over Dallas. Good road win. And these are games that I think they're going to need to have to win to stay afloat. The schedule does kind of has ebbs and flows as far as difficult versus easy games. But they have a lot of games coming up here on the road. So it's important for them to go into these environments and win. And they got punched in the mouth at the beginning of that game, quite literally, like 11-0 within 2 minutes. And it's like, oh, God, here we go. But, I mean, they really fought back and were fired up and actually led at the end of the first quarter. And they maintained a lead for most of the game. And every time Dallas would make a run, they would come back. And, I mean, the final score is a little deceiving because a lot of that were the Dallas Mavericks were chucking up threes at the end of the game. But I was very impressed with Tobias. 28 points to lead the Sixers, and he was clutch. The 3 he hit with under a minute left really sealed the game for the Sixers. So good to see him because they're certainly going to need him. And I think as he goes right now, so go the Sixers until Joe comes back. And they need him to be that third option. Kelly Oubre had 21. You're going to need him to continue to step up. But it seems as though they're starting to gel this team without Joe, which is good to keep them afloat because I know some people will make the argument about going into the play-in, and I don't want any parts. Too much can happen, too much uncertainty. I'd rather just get the 5 seed or the 6 seed and be done with it. But they're going to need these guys to step up and really gel until Joe comes back. And Tobias specifically is going to have to play like he did yesterday. And he just looked like, and I hear what his dad says about he's a scoring assassin, but this is what we need from him all the time. I don't know why he can't do this consistently. And I think that's been what has plagued him his entire career. But good win. They hung on and really won when it needed to. So good win for the Sixers on the road in Dallas in a hostile environment after getting punched in the mouth too. All right, Flyers in action tonight against St. Louis. There's 20 games left, and the schedule is tough, and this is going to be a good test and a good learning experience. And I know whatever anybody's saying, they want to be in the playoffs, and they're not rebuilding or whatever you're doing. But let's be honest, they're rebuilding. But with a young team, this is great experience being in a playoff race with the stretch here, 20 games against tough opponents. And if you are going to be in the playoffs, you need to beat these teams anyway. So this is a great learning experience, in my opinion, for these Flyers. They did officially sign Denver Barkley, their third-round pick in 2023, to the team. He currently leads the London Knights of the OHL in points, goals, and assists. And man, I hope he pans out and makes the team, because what a great name, Denver Barkley. But that got me thinking for today's question of the day. Let's have a little bit of fun on a Monday. I almost said Friday. Wishful thinking there. But what is the best name in Philadelphia sports history? Did a little digging on this, and I picked one from each team. But if there's somebody that you think is better, certainly get that into me. 267-495-8531. Leave a voicemail. Send a text message. Let's have some fun with this on a Monday. Is it Bibbles Baywell, who was a DB for the Eagles in 1950? Pickles Dillhofer, who was a catcher for the Phillies in 1918? Dick Cherry, who was a defenseman for the Flyers in the late 60s, early 70s? Or World B. Free, who everybody knows who he is for the Sixers? Let me know. These are some great names. Bibbles Baywell, Pickles Dillhofer. The 12-year-old me loves Dick Cherry. World B. Free. Let me know. Is there anybody I'm missing? But, I mean, I think Pickles Dillhofer might be my favorite name. 267-495-8531. Get you in. Let me know who's the greatest name in Philly sports history, and did I leave anyone off? All right. Speaking of those Phillies, and the big thing, and their team is pretty much set. There's only a handful of positions that are up for grabs, and one of the more intriguing ones is that one of the final bench spots, and it looks like it's coming down to Jake Cave and Christian Pache, and both of them are out of minor league options, so one of them is going to get cut. But Jake Cave yesterday went 2 for 3, staking his claim, and these two have been balling out, knowing that one of them, and again, this is all assuming that Rojas gets the starting position in center field. He went 0 for 4 yesterday, but again, you're going to have games like that. But it's coming down to Jake Cave and Christian Pache, and it's season where the expectations are high. This is huge, because if you think back to 2008 when the Phillies won, guys like Greg Dobbs and Eric Bruntlett made such a difference. So the bench guys for a championship team need to, and that was probably, I think, if you had to say there was a weakness on last year's team, other than they were streaky, it probably was the bench. So if you get, I'm partial to Pache. I said that the other day, but I mean, you need these guys to really, and I think they've upgraded with some of the moves they made. So that's the one thing I'm looking on as we go through the rest of spring training. I will be having the Phillies preview coming up for Back to the Future soon, so stay tuned for that. Best way to stay in the loop is to like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Good to see Alec Boehm yesterday go 3 for 3 with an RBI. And there's a lot of buzz about the Phillies still having a big interest in Blake Snell. But they want it on a short-term deal, which I don't necessarily disagree with. It's just odd to me that the Cy Young Award winner is still, there's something going on that nobody's willing to sign him long-term. Maybe he just has unrealistic expectations, but I'm very bullish on the Phillies rotation this year, but I will not turn my nose up as adding Blake Snell to this rotation. So we'll have to see how things go. And I mean, that is one of those things where you're taking dead aim at the Braves and the Dodgers. So more on that as the story develops. I mentioned Back to the Future. Be sure to like and subscribe the YouTube channel and Back to the Future. I'm using that more as my special platform now for previews and roundtables and interviews and things like that. Check out my interview from a couple weeks ago with Brian Michael, who is the producer of A League Apart. It takes a look at the legacy of the Negro Leagues in Philadelphia, and it's a rich history. Had a great time at the event they did last week, hearing some of the stories from these authors. Milt Thompson was great. So just check out the interview I did with Brian on Back to the Future with a PH, wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. And hit the subscribe button. Just hit it. Hit it. Doesn't matter if you're watching on YouTube or listening. Just hit it. Hit it. And you will not be disappointed. All right, time for our Bubble Watch. And Temple women with a big win over ECU yesterday, 81-66. They're still in that three-way tie for first place in the American. They take on the Owls of Florida Atlantic on Wednesday to end the regular season and then start the American women's tournament. So for now, the Temple Lady Owls are still alive for a berth in the NCAA tournament. They have to win the American tournament, so the higher their seed, the better shot they have. And speaking of the Phils, and Temple for that matter, just get geared up and ready for spring. Go to phillygoat.com. They have you covered for all of your Philly sports apparel needs. Their shoes are phenomenal. Get your Phillies gear. Get stuff ready for the Sixers playoff run, hopefully Flyers, whatever you need. The Union are back. Go to phillygoat.com. Use the promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off your order. That's phillygoat.com. Promo code Jim Montgomery for 10% off of your order. All right, today we're going to go back to 1990. And on this day, 1990, Hank Gathers died of hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is basically, and I apologize if there's any medical people out there and I mispronounced that, let me know. But basically, it's the thickening of the heart muscles, and kind of had some issues and went undiagnosed. He was a Strawberry Mansion native and went to Dobbins Tech, and just listen to how good the public league was back then. He played with his brother Derek, Bo Kimball, and Doug Overton on that Dobbins team. That public league was just, like I said, was just stacked during this time. In 1984, they lost to Ben Franklin and Pooh Richardson, who played in the NBA. And then the following year, they beat Lionel Simmons' South Philly team for the public league championship. Lionel Simmons also played in the NBA. So Hank Gathers and Bo Kimball went to USC together, and they were not friends until their senior year of high school. Even though they both played basketball and went. They didn't become really good friends until his senior year. After their freshman year at USC, there was a new coach, George Raveling. Long story short, revoked their scholarships, and they both decided to transfer together to Loyola Marymount. They had to sit out a season because back then the NCAA was very strict with transfers. But then Hank Gathers became a star at Loyola Marymount. He was a three-time first-team West Coast Conference player. Was a West Coast Conference Player of the Year in 1989. Became only the second player ever to lead the country in both scoring and rebounding. Two-time West Coast Conference Tournament MVP. Second-team All-American in 1990. Was a third-teamer in 89. And he, going into his senior year, was considered a Player of the Year candidate. Definitely a lottery pick at Loyola. And Philly's Paul Westhead was the coach at Loyola, so he had a run and gun style, and they would regularly put up like well into the 100 points in their games. They were a lot of fun to watch back then. In a game in December of '89, he collapsed, got put on some medicine for an irregular heartbeat, I believe they called it. Didn't like how it made him feel, so he started to cut back on the medicine. Ultimately, in the West Coast Conference Tournament, he collapsed and unfortunately died in the middle of the game. And when he fell, I thought this name was interesting. And Eric Spoelstra was a player for Portland. That was like right there when he passed away. Just very, very sad. And this really hit me hard. Like I really got into this team. Like I was very big into college basketball. So this was like the time of UNLV with Tarkanian. Duke was the hated team. Kentucky was good. North Carolina. So like I really like this team, and this really hit me hard. Bo Kimball, his friend, obviously shot his first foul shot of every game in the NCAA tournament. Left-handed in honor of Hank. Loyola went on a run to the Elite Eight that year before they ran into UNLV, and that game was incredible. I think everyone in the country, unfortunately for UNLV, was rooting for Loyola Marymount that game. But Hank Gathers, number 44, is retired, and he has a statue on campus. The Hank Gathers Community Center is there on Diamond Street. I used to pass it all the time when I lived in East Falls and would drive to Temple. The book, for you, Hank, I have it right over there on my bookshelf. One of the first books, like a biography book I read when I was a kid. Again, the whole situation hit me hard. The whole story is good, and I know it's an old book, but I definitely, For You, Hank, is the name of the book by Bo Kimball, I should say, and just a life taken too soon, unfortunately, and could have been a stud if he went into the NBA. But on this day in 1990, Hank Gathers passed away while playing in the semifinals of the West Coast Conference tournament. They went on to cancel the tournament and award the berth to Loyola due to them winning the regular season title. They would go on a run and make it to the Elite Eight. But Hank Gathers, one of the best high school players in the history of Philadelphia, who actually really came into his own as a college player, passed away on this day of basically a thickening of his heart muscles during the West Coast Conference tournament. All right, finally today, our Philly Sports Women's History Month Spotlight. We're going to take a look at Jean Shirley, who was a high jumper from Haverford High. She also played basketball, which is where she got noticed. A local reporter said, hey, you should try out for the 1928 Olympic team because of your jumping ability. So she made the team as a high jumper, and she was only 16. Like, how impressive is that? A high jumper at 16 made the Olympics. She finished fourth in the 1928 Amsterdam Games, but from there, she really just took off, no pun intended, and won 3 straight national titles from 1929 to 1931. She tied in 1932 with Babe Dietrichson, and both of them went to the 1932 Olympics in LA. And it was just a battle between Shirley and Dietrichson, and both of them just really, like, they went jump for jump, and excuse me, both of them set the world record twice during their jump for jump. So basically, the final jump, Dietrichson was ruled inadmissible because she did a diving roll, which I guess at the time was illegal. So Jean Shirley won the gold medal in the 1932 Olympics for the high jump. She held the world record then until 1939. She held the U.S. record until 1948. She also set the U.S. record for indoor high jump, which stood for 38 years. She was on Temple's track team. She was ruled ineligible, unfortunately, for the 1936 games because she had worked as a swim instructor. The stinking rules that the Olympics had back then were just ridiculous. She's in the Temple Hall of Fame, the Philadelphia Sports Hall of Fame. Gold medalist and world record holder Jean Shirley is today's Philly Sports Women's History Month Spotlight. On this day in 1990, Hank Gathers passed away while on the court in the West Coast Conference semifinals. Just one of the story is great. I do recommend reading the book and looking that up. But shout out to Hank Gathers, whose legacy still lives on with the Hank Gathers Community Center there on Diamond Street. Be sure to check out the interview I did with Brian Michael on Back to the Future. Like and subscribe. Let me know who has the best name in Philly sports history. Is it Bibbles Baywell, Pickles Dornhofer, Dick Cherry, or Will Be Free? And I just can't get over Pickles Dillhofer. Like Dill Pickle, like it's the perfect name to me. Pickles Dillhofer gets the win. But let me know, 267-495-8531 get you in. Hopefully you can get out and enjoy this weather before the rain comes. This has been This Day in Philly Sports History. I'm Jim Montgomery, and until next time, don't let Pickles Dillhofer get you. I'll see you when I see you.